Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Well, it's now officially December, which means we are now less than a month away from a new year. It's crazy how fast this year has flown and how many films I've reviewed and watched. But we've got no time to waste, so let's make the last days of 2024 count. And today, I'm really excited because I'm doing something I'm happy to be doing for the first time on YouTube. I'm reviewing a Christmas movie! Ah, Christmas, my favorite time of the year. The lights, colors, tree, hot chocolate, getting together with family and friends. This is always the time of the year I like the best. I just wish it wasn't so frickin' cold because I really hate winter, but at least there's a lot of other things to talk about, which includes watching some good old Christmas films and specials. I mean, there's tons to choose from. The Rankin Bass specials, Chuck Jones Grinch, Charlie Brown, Polar Express, Arthur Christmas. And hey, you also can't go wrong with films like It's a Wonderful Life, Home Alone, A Christmas Story, and yes, even Die Hard, right? Yes, it's a Christmas movie, I'm counting it. And now we've got a new one coming out that I've been curious to review ever since its announcement last year. It's called That Christmas, and it's a new animated film that just dropped on Netflix from Locksmith Animation. And it seemed like it was kind of a cute film and it had things going for it, including the pretty visuals, the cozy atmosphere, the fact that the director was Simon Otto, who had a hand in animating the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, and also that it came from writer Richard Curtis. This seemed like it was a film that was up my alley and one that could be a sleek little watch. And it's also a film that I was also modestly curious about, given that it was the second animated film to be coming from the British studio Locksmith Animation, whom I've been watching for a while since I feel like it was cool to see a new animation presence enter the wide array of competition. Because it's been a while since a new animation studio entered the field and really made a name for themselves. Honestly, I think the last animation studio that really entered the field and did become a major competitor that's had success was probably Illumination. And that was almost 15 years ago. I've been really wanting to see a new studio enter the field and showcase what they have to offer that's exciting and innovative, especially considering it's been 4 years since Blue Sky Studios was sadly shut down. I mean, who's been some current new players who have entered the field that really has the potential to make it big? Well, I guess there's Paramount Animation, but they're currently a mess and are still working out their kinks despite Mutant Mayhem and Transformers 1 working out. Warner Brothers re-entered the scene in 2014 and showed early promise, but they fumbled so badly they're being rebooted and will get back into the game in 2026. And there's also Annapurna Animation, whom does have promise, though they've currently only had one film at the moment, so it's too early to make the call. Though I am really excited to see what they have in store after Nimona. And that's where Locksmith Animation comes in. They were formed in 2014 by two former Aardman employees and were posed to become the next new name in British animation. And they've had a slightly bumpy road trying to get their films released by the studios, and it's not because of the animation studio themselves or any behind-the-scenes shenanigans happening at Locksmith, it's just that the studios they've partnered with have had deals completely collapse on them. They first initially partnered with Paramount in 2016, but Paramount bailed on them a year later when they decided they felt the studio's films didn't fit with their slate. Afterwards, they went with 20th Century Fox, but Disney eventually bought them, and that deal also went south, although it turned out one feature film, which I'll get to in a bit. As of now, they're currently partnered with Warner Brothers, and it seems like the deal has gone swimmingly over there, and hopefully things will continue to work out. Although I'm not terribly sure how this film ended up on Netflix, but I digress. I've been hopeful for this studio to make a big splash, even if their debut animated film didn't do much for me. That was their 2021 film, Ron's Gone Wrong, a story about a young boy who ends up getting a defective robot and ends up becoming friends with him. It had all the pieces to become a very sweet and charming animated film, but I just thought it was okay. It wasn't bad at all, but it did need a little bit of work. Its animation was really good, the cast was really solid, with Zach Galifianakis being the scene stealer, and the story had charm to spare, but the screenplay needed to be tightened a lot more, mainly the dialogue, which wasn't that well written, and the characters left a lot to be desired. For a film about friendship featuring outsider characters, it just didn't hit the same way that Luca did that came out the same year. And that film also had Jack Dylan Grazer, oddly enough. Huh. It's a real shame, because it was made by the same people who made Arthur Christmas, so you'd think it would have the same charm, but I thought it was a pretty disappointing film. But I didn't lose hope for Locksmith, because I could tell there was potential in them, and it's been proven that sometimes a second film from animation studios is the real true debut, even if their first film wasn't that great. For example, DreamWorks and Sony had pretty unappealing debuts with both Ants and Open Season respectively, but they've really proved themselves with the sophomore films, The Prince of Egypt and Surf's Up. I thought that with that Christmas, this could be the real chance for Locksmith to shine and showcase what they're capable of. And honestly, I think this film definitely shows they're onto something. I really enjoyed that Christmas. Okay, is it a perfect film? No, not really, and I can totally see why some critics are really not caring for this one. I don't know, there was just something about this film that I just ended up really liking. It had enough warmth and cheer that I find myself getting washed up by the end of it. Alright, so what's it about? Well, the plot of this film is essentially an anthology of 3 separate stories set in the quiet British town of Wellington-on-Sea, all taking place in the days leading up to and on Christmas. So, I might as well talk about it in them order. The first segment follows a young boy named Danny, played by Jack Wisniewski, who recently moved to town with his mother, played by Jodie Whittaker, who's a very busy nurse and is barely at home while his father is out of town. And so, he has to learn to let love back into his heart and appreciate his mother with the help of his strict school teacher, Miss Trapper, played by Fiona Shaw. The second plot involves 2 twins named Sam and Charlie, played by Zazie Hayhurst and Sienna Sarah respectively. With Charlie being mischievous and causing naughty things left and right, Sam is worried that her twin sister might not get anything for Christmas from Santa Claus, and wonders how she can try to find the nice side in her sister before it's too late. And finally, the third segment follows a girl named Bernadette, played by India Brown, who's left in charge by her parents who attend a Christmas Eve wedding and basically is forced to learn responsibility with making sure all goes according to plan by babysitting another group of kids and her younger sister Eve, while the parents get themselves into a pickle when their Volkswagen bus skids off the road and leaves them stranded in a blizzard. And all of this is tied together in various ways, including visits from Santa Claus, played by Brian Cox. So, this film has been getting a lot of mixed reviews from people, and I can see why it has, because it can be a bit schmaltzy and a little bit too overstuffed for some people, but I don't know, like I said, something about this just clicked with me and I did end up really enjoying it. It's not perfect, and I certainly have complaints, which I will talk about in a minute, but I think this film does a lot more right than wrong, and I think the stories really work. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but this film is actually based on 3 separate books that were all tied together, and that might seem like it would be a recipe for disaster, as this can be a very risky approach, and done wrong, it can be very sloppy. It's how we ended up with something like The Secret Life of Pets 2. But here, it actually works quite well because all 3 of the stories correlate in one way. The film starts off on a pretty funny note as we see all the kids putting on a winter play in which Bernie rewrites the nativity story with vegetables and pop saw needle drops, and I thought it was actually kind of funny. It seemed like a clever way to poke fun at these trends that you would see in animated films, plus the idea of kids putting on a recreation of the nativity story and including the song Papa Don't Preach by Madonna is so silly that I just had to laugh at it. It's goofy, but the right kind of goofy. And I think the comedy does land. It did get a handful of chuckles out of me. Not all the time, I could have done without some of the annoying jokes, like a crotch shot and a whoopee cushion, but I think the humor does mostly work. Though, it's not the comedy that really carries the film, but rather the film's heart, and I thought that was very sweet. All these stories really showcase some good Christmas messages, and I think it leaves the audience with something heartwarming. If I had to pick my favorite of the 3, I'd say the one with the 2 twins. The way it showcases the 2 girls and how polar opposite they are, with one being completely mischievous and the other timid yet sweet, made for a really interesting contrast, and I think the payoff it has at the end really sticks the landing. The plot with Danny is also fairly strong too, as I really like the bond that he has with his strict teacher, with both trying to let love back into their hearts after seemingly being shut in. There's a great moment where Danny accidentally attends school on a snow day, and Miss Trapper tries to explain to him physics by building snowmen outside. It was quite clever, and I thought that the bond was genuine. The third segment with Bernie being the guardian of the kids is also mostly good, but it is easily the weakest of the 3. I do like the scenes with the kids being left alone in the house and starting to become reckless with no parents around and breaking the Christmas traditions their parents forced them to do, which includes making them rewatch Love Actually every year. That was pretty funny. I just don't like the subplot involving the parents in the Volkswagen bus. I like the idea of them being away from home and not making it back in time for Christmas because of the storm, but I think the whole thing with them being in a flipped over truck in the middle of nowhere on a frozen lake, that was too much. I think that segment was way overblown and too goofy for this film. It just didn't mesh well with the other scenes and stood out quite badly. But despite that, the heart was still strong throughout, and I thought the way it ended up being tied all together worked out quite nicely. As far as the animation goes, I also really liked it. This is a film that really does look like a Christmas film, down to its colors, coziness, and also cold atmosphere. You can really get the sense you are stuck in this cold and snowed-in blizzard town. The film was animated by DNEG, and like always, this is a top-notch looking film. They never phone it in and always give the look of their animation 110%. And I also thought the characters in the film were also quite charming, especially all the kids. I think when it comes to films, I really pay attention to how children are written the most, because I think it could be very easy to screw them up and make them feel flat and archetypal. But all the children in here are very likable, distinct, and they feel real. Danny's growth is quite nice as we see him going from a shy, quiet character frustrated about his parents being mostly absent into getting more confidence and letting love back into his heart, and it really works when it comes to the crush he has with Sam. I thought the two scenes between them were very sweet. And like I said, the twins are probably my favorite children characters in the film. They seem like polar opposites when the film starts, with one being a sweet but timid girl and the other being absolutely mischievous and naughty, but you soon realize that despite this, there's more to them deep down that really helps make them understood each other. Like, there's a moment I won't spoil that I thought was genuinely sweet and touching. It definitely was the kind of heartwarming Christmas moment that I really like. And Bernie is also a fun character too, with her thinking that if she can have things her own way and changing up tradition, it'll still be amazing, but through this, she learns a little bit more about responsibility. It leads to a big lesson that she has to learn during the climax, and I really liked it a lot. I thought it was well handled. As far as the adult characters go, while they're not a whole lot in the film, I do think that most are pretty good. Santa is quite fun, despite his limited presence. And I think the strict school teacher, Miss Trapper, is the best character in the film, as we see her stern attitude and think that's all she is, and then we realize there's more to her underneath, and yet it doesn't feel quite overblown, too over the top, or just comes right out of left field. And I also think Fiona Shaw is quite excellent too. She probably has one of my favorite voiceover performances of the year. I really liked her in this. I think the only characters I wasn't huge into were the parents stuck in the car. Again, much like the subplot itself, I thought some of them were a bit too much and overblown, and others just faded into the background. I don't think they fit quite well for this film. But the rest of the adults were fine enough for what it's worth. So, yeah, I can say that flaws and all, I enjoyed that Christmas. While the script has a couple of dud jokes, and the subplot with the Volkswagen bus was too silly for me, the story is well tied together and is sweet and charming, the animation is lovely and feels quite Christmassy, and the characters are all mostly likable and feel distinct. Honestly, I think this is definitely worth a watch on Netflix. I do wish it wasn't released on streaming, but rather in theaters, because I would have liked to see this on a big screen. But hey, if you're looking for an animated film to watch on Netflix, as well as a good new Christmas film, you could be doing worse. So I'm gonna give That Christmas an 8. It's a lovely charmer and definitely a fun watch. It's nice to see another fun Christmas film, and I can definitely say that Locksmith really made a fun animated film that I think really does showcase what they can do. And I'm eager to see what they have coming out next. But as this is a Christmas I'd be happy to remember and revisit.
Who are you talking to? You talking to yourself again, Sans?